Sadly, it's a relatable scenario for so many people seeking a career in content creation.
My parents were always kind of like, they didn't get it. And I remember when I'd be screenwriting, they didn't understand what I was doing. They're just like, what about your homework though?
Ah, yes. How many times have we heard from folks whose parents want them to become accountants, engineers, electricians?
It's always the whole idea of like fearing what they don't understand, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a common situation, and it can be a real stumbling block for creators, leading to uncertainty, insecurity, and self-doubt.
So get ready to follow your dreams. And hopefully we're going to be able to make your next family dinner just a little less awkward.
Welcome to First Frame, brought to you by TELUS STORYHIVE. I'm Jennifer Park.
And I'm Cameron Zinger, and we're here to help new and emerging Canadian content creators by answering their most pressing questions, sharing diverse success stories, and getting insights from people who have been down this road before.
On every episode, we unpack the journey of a leading Canadian creator, or creators, all the way from inception to completion. We'll hear about their wins and their challenges, and ultimately provide our creative community with the mentorship and sense of belonging that they're looking for.
Canadian content creators need a podcast to call home. This is it.
So the question is, how do you manage the pressure of family expectations and convince your loved ones that, yes, there is a future in being a filmmaker or a live streamer or a podcaster?
So to help us answer these complicated questions, I'm honored to introduce our guest for today's conversation. First up is Somalia-born filmmaker who now calls Vancouver home. Her work focuses on refugees' perspectives, but also includes some comedy and horror elements.
I was so desperate that even last week, I said yes to babysitting Caroline's a lizard. A lizard, who, by the way, needs 2 bath salts a day.
You need 2 salt baths?
I don't care. Why are you even bathing a lizard to begin with? Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum.
Ilhan Abdullahi, welcome to First Frame.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And second, we have a Calgary-based videographer who actually started out as a rapper. I need to hear more about this, before realizing his true passion was visual storytelling. Kien To, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Before we dive deeper into today's topic, we really always do like to get to know our guests a little bit more. So, Ilhan, I want to start with you. I understand you have sort of been interested in the arts and culture scene pretty early on. So how and when did you first decide you wanted to be a content creator?
Yeah, I think as a kid, film was always what kind of connected me to like the new country that we came to, and just kind of like learning about the language and just being with my family. And we'd always just kind of gather every evening around the TV, and we're all just so captivated. And then I realized I love laughing. And I love to make people laugh as well. So I was like, oh my God, this is such an engaging way to tell stories. And like over time, my grandma was like an incredible storyteller in the community. And I used to hang out with her a lot. And we'd go for tea. I'd hang out with other elders. And I just witnessed her just like tell stories in like the funniest way possible. And I'm like, my grandma is low-key a comedian. She doesn't know it. And I'm like, that's kind of what I want to do. But I want to do it in the film sense. And so that's kind of like why and how I kind of got into it, or like what kind of the moments that sparked that interest, I guess.
And I have to say, even in watching your StoryHive project, there were definitely some comedic elements that were in your project. So we definitely have more questions for you, Ilham. But first, let's pass the mic over to Kien for a moment first. So what about you? As I said, I definitely need to know more about your origins as a rapper and sort of how that transformed into videography and filmmaking.
Okay, so at the very beginning, it was all for vain purposes, right? I just wanted to self-promote and get myself out there and be heard, have my music be heard. I really prioritized self-expression a lot, which is something, that my family doesn't really understand because it's not practical. But you gotta fight against the man and and rebel, I guess.
I almost want to put you on the spot and ask you to rap for us, but I don't think
Right?
that's fair. We haven't given you an opportunity to even prep for that. So we won't do that to you.
And I have to say that my inner 90s child needs to find your rap videos
It's still up
so
there.
I can listen to them.
It's still there. Yeah. I know what I'm doing after this episode.
I'll
I'm
be
gonna go.
hunting.
Yeah.
I'll be Googling that. But back to you, Ilhan. You mentioned that your grandma sort of inspires you, because that's actually my next question. I was like, who's inspired you along the way, other than obviously your
Yeah.
grandma?
Okay, I always tell everyone who knows me just knows I talk about Issa Rae nonstop. So she's a filmmaker. I think it was like, so my grandma, of course, inspired me to be like try to be funny. I don't know if I am, but I was like, you know what, I'm inspired to be. And over time, I became like a YouTube like obsessed kid when it came out, and I was always on it. And then I think I stumbled on an episode of uh Issa Rae's first, I think it was her first YouTube series called Awkward Black Girl. And I was like, oh my God, it was so funny. It was about this character who just talks about awkward moments as a Black woman and what you experience in the world. And I thought she was hilarious. And I used to just watch her all the time and then like watch an episode and write my own bootleg version of an episode. And then now to see where she is and just kind of see how she started off really grassroots, making her own short stuff on YouTube with her community, and then now like all the films that Issa Rae produces and her show. So she's definitely been up there when it comes to inspirations.
Oh, nice. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
And how about yourself?
There's Wong Fu. Um,
Mm.
Oh, we
they're
have them
actually
coming.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
they're going to be
so
on our show.
excited for that. But definitely because we don't see, faces like mine on the big screen in Hollywood that much, we were always seeking, alternate sources, which YouTube was a huge source for Asian creators. And it's not like they were telling all these Asian stories. They were just telling regular
Mhm.
love stories. You know what I mean? Just with faces like mine. So that was super inspiring. And once again, it's one of those things where you just want to stick it to the man, and you want to like go against what the norm is and be non-conventional, essentially.
Yeah, no,
I've-
representation is huge
Yeah,
on
Mhm.
screen. I
And it
agree.
didn't used to, be this way. Like there were barely any Asian faces back in the day.
Right.
100%.
So I have a question for both of you. Now that you're into filmmaking, content creation, and video creation, out of the projects that you have created so far, or perhaps there is one coming, which of the projects are you most proud of or excited about?
There's two that have been so memorable for me, and I think it's because the impact that they've had in the community that I've been really trying to center in my stories. And one of them is a project that was funded through TELUS Storyhive, and that was Not For Us, which was like a camping comedy. And the reason I say that
Loved it.
yeah, thank you. It was so fun to make. We just kept laughing. That was my mom's acting debut. So
Oh,
kind of,
no way.
yeah, it was. And so kind of to see my family's hesitation with like, we don't really see our community doing this, to like having her be on camera, and she kind of stole the show. That was amazing. And then after, we took it to so many different cities, and Minnesota is one of them. And they have like the largest Somali population that settled there in North America. And like, as a filmmaker, you're always nervous to share your work. And I just remember playing it and people were just laughing. And it's just like when we made the film, we're just like, are people gonna get it? Are they gonna get it? But like the community was like so receptive, and they were like, we haven't seen us shown in this comedic light. Like a lot of our stories are always centered on trauma, which is valid as well. But we don't see a lot of stuff where we're just like trying to do basic things that we fail at. And it's just funny. And not just the Somali community, like people that are even campers, my friends that camp 24/7, they're like, that's kind of funny. This is why you never come. I'm like, exactly. So that project has been probably the most memorable for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. And I can say we got it.
Yeah.
We absolutely got it watching
100%.
it.
Yes.
Flashback to camping right after watching the Blair Witch movie.
Yeah.
And I felt that the whole way. But I have to say, I love the piece that you just mentioned about having your mom support the project and be part
Yeah.
of the project. So I want to dive into that a little bit later.
Yes.
Perfect comment for this particular topic that we're going to dive into today. Kien, what about you? If you had to pick one project that you were most proud of or most excited about that's coming up.
I was gonna say past projects would be my own rap videos, obviously. No.
Yeah.
But actually my All Feast YYC project with Storyhive has been the most impactful for the businesses or the restaurants that I've covered. Um, and because of relatability, because I used to own a family restaurant with my family, I saw the impact on them because like they're a lot of the people are like immigrants, who've come here and took a risk and started something on their own. So I think those projects, because of its impact, is actually one of my favorites. Hoping for a season 3, by the way.
I can tell you
Yes.
though, watching your series, I'm
Yeah.
always hungry by the time it's
Yes.
over. I'm like,
Nice.
so I've tried to eat before I watch your episodes because if I don't, I usually go and binge in the cupboard after we're done. So I'm like, but it always looks so good. Yeah.
Thank you. That
100%.
means
I
it's did its job. It did
Yeah.
its
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to book a week in Calgary just so that I can eat.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
to eat because visuals, like drooling as
Yeah.
I was watching it. So
Same.
Yeah.
Even right now, thinking about it.
Let's jump into the next part of today's conversation and dive deeper into actually why we're here, which is really to talk about, the challenges everyone faces when trying to manage getting into this type of a career and their family specifically. So what I wanted to first ask is, how did your family ultimately react when you first opened up about wanting to be in this type of a field or do this type of work?
So as you might recognize that my theme is always going against the grain. So even as a rapper, like that made my mom and dad's head hurt like for a really long time because I was doing that for like about a decade before I became a videographer.
Okay.
They think it's just like child's play, like it's just for fun or it's just a phase that you're gonna get over. And it's always the whole idea of like fearing what they don't understand, pretty much. Like, "Oh, no, my son's gonna be broke forever," type of thing.
Yeah, and to be
Yeah.
honest with you, we hear that all the time. That people seem to think that it's can't necessarily be you make a living in this type of a world, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's every parent's nature too to just always be worried about your kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think with myself, it's like with filmmaking, it's still brand new to a lot of our community. And so, when we came here, it was kind of like survival, right? You're being told, hey, like find a career that is sustainable. And like filmmaking was never seen that way. Even to this day, like being an indie filmmaker, I'm still struggling trying to figure out how to make it sustainable in all honesty. And so I think my parents were always kind of like, they didn't get it. And I remember when I'd be screenwriting, they didn't understand what I was doing. They're just like, what about your homework though? Also, in our culture, there aren't like you see a lot of men in films, but you don't see that many women. So there's always conversations around gender norms and what does that look like to be on screen versus kind of being behind the screen. So it was just a lot more like fear and doubts of like, what are others going to think? And then also the fear of like, can you sustain yourself through this? Why don't you just focus on having another career that you could, pay the bills with and then just do filmmaking on the side? And ironically, that's what I ended up doing.
So then I have a question for both of you. And Ilhan, you mentioned this a little bit about some of the things that you were doing, but what did you do to sort of show them or convince them that like, you're not wasting your time. This is what I want to do. And has
Yeah.
that worked? Do they actually now believe that this is what you do?
Yeah, I think with it was my first. So before the Story Hive project, I did a short documentary, and it was a really wholesome project where I used to be a youth worker growing up here in Surrey, and so I ended up my first documentary was with those youth that I used to work with. They're newcomer youth, and we did a project called Dreamers, and it's basically about how do we shift the narrative about refugees. They're not just relying on the system; they actually have dreams that they come with. And so I think it was creating that project, and my parents just saw like how deeply committed I was to telling community stories that they were like, okay, cool. But I was still working full time. And I
Right.
still do. I still have my main like 9 to 5 hustle because I'm still trying to figure it out of how to do this full time where it's sustainable and I'm not just putting all my money into it and just praying that something happens. I think there's also assumptions that a lot of families don't know what it takes to put a film together and like the project management skills that you need and all these different things. So I think it was when they saw that and then they started to come to set. So my dad came to my most recent set that I just did 2 weeks ago. My mom came to the Not For Us set, and they just started to like respect the work and be like, oh my god, there's like 20 plus crew members and cast, and everyone's pulling their time in. And I think that sparked some like curiosity and validation.
To actually see it come together a little bit.
Totally, totally.
So, Kien, what about you?
The tension kind of eased when I actually started getting clients. And the more clients I had, the more I was able to self sustain. Being like living with my fiance, for like 6 years now, um, there was proof that I'm at least not going to be on the streets. I think that's ultimately what they want, which is
Yeah.
for me not to be completely down in the dumps. So that eased everything, but at the same time, the acceptance is still not there.
Still working on that.
Hmm.
Do you think it's because they had just a different plan for you in their minds? Is it maybe because they don't understand the industry?
I think because I started off, rapping and making these little videos for myself, and it was so fun, and they see that when you're having fun, it might not be work,
So, yeah, not
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's what it is ultimately, where the perception of video creation obviously has evolved all these years, right? But to them, it's still that old school way.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, we've got much more to unpack when it comes to gaining family support, but we want to take a little sidebar and have a bit of fun with a segment we like to call 1 Minute Mentor.
Here's how this is going to work. So we're going to put 30 seconds on a clock, and we want each of you to share your best piece of advice that you've been given about creating content. Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Perfect.
Don't do it alone. I think that's what I've been learning and that's what I've been told. I think as a creative, you're always like, okay, these are my ideas. This is really cool. I'm going to figure it out, but nothing gets done without a collective. So I would say like find people, even if it's not friends that are in the content creation world or do film, people that could just, help out in other ways. So find your collective, find your people. Don't do it alone.
I love this because this is consistent advice that we're getting from our guests on this show is find your community.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Find your
important.
people.
Find your
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Keen.
That's so good. Okay. Mine is to tie your identity to everything that you're doing. So then it's harder for you to feel like a fraud or feel like you have the imposter syndrome. So for me, it's kind of like Kien is the type of person who does X, Y, and Z. And when you associate yourself as a person who does certain things, the obstacle lessens, I would say.
I love that.
Now it's time to zero in on what our main focus of this episode is. So, first, did you ever consider the possibility that your family might never fully support your creative career? And Kian, because you've commented that your family's not yet fully on board, I want to throw this over to you first.
I think for me personally, I'm always going to be wanting that acceptance, spending my
Yeah.
whole life to kind of earn it, right? Um, but they have to understand what it is first. Content creation is a very broad term for a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like movies, content for clients, or just something for fun. And because it's so broad, it's even harder to understand for them as immigrant parents.
Knowledge is so important, right? Like that
Yeah.
education piece and teaching and helping them understand the industry. Yeah, could go a long way.
Yeah.
So I have
Definitely.
a secondary question for that, and then Ilhan, I'll come to you.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered doing a project with your parents?
You know that Pan Asian project that's coming out with StoryHive? I was thinking of doing a story on my parents' love story.
Ooh,
Oh.
I love that.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's because like, you don't really hear it from the immigrant like side, A lot of people who create stories are like me, like second generation who come here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to tell their story that nobody really knows about.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, I
Yeah.
will say I'm very excited to read your pitch. So, Ilhan, over to you, and I'll just repeat the question here for you.
Okay.
Did you ever consider the possibility that your family might not fully support you?
I think early when I was like thinking of trying to get into this world, maybe like in my like late teens, early 20s, I was just like, oh my God, this is gonna have to be like a secret identity, like, like living a double life. at all. Like Hannah Montana filmmaking, it makes no sense. And then over time, I realized, I think as I got older, and I think it's also because of my community work that I do. And so on the side, I do a lot of community organizing events. And I think they just always knew that at the heart of the work is going to be around community. And so now I'm like, any project I have, like I'll just send it to them. And my parents sometimes, my mom especially, she reads my scripts. She wants to know what I'm doing. And then she'll try to find people for me now. She's like, oh, I'm not acting anymore, girl, but I know someone that could potentially be in your film. So now we have that dynamic now, which is very interesting.
I think we should all rally though and bring mom back.
I know,
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah, out of retirement. Come on, mom.
Yeah,
Out of
right?
retirement.
Just come on.
Yeah.
I'll start the petition.
Thank you. I will let her know. I will let her know.
How do you demonstrate the value of the creative work that you're doing to basically your parents who maybe don't know as much about the industry?
I think for me, like the first few times I didn't know how to do that. And I also didn't know how the set worked, right? I just see it from the movies how it looks cray cray sometimes, people yelling at each other, like it's an exclusive set. And then I think when I realized, especially with StoryHive, like how much ownership that we were given for our projects and our sets, I was like, oh, this would be a great entry point for my parents to actually come on set, be a part of the project, just see what it's like, meet people in the film world. And then that's just become a tactic over time where I'm just like, hey, come on set, hang out, meet people, and then we might throw you in front of the camera.
Great way to approach it, right? There's so many different roles within the industry. So,
Yeah.
and getting your parents there on site to see all those different roles in action, what a great way
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see. Yeah. And Keen, what about you?
I just think like keep demonstrating the practicality that
Mm.
it's providing me, you know,
Mhm.
with more businesses needing video, you know, with marketing and all that kind of stuff. And that's also my background too, is in marketing. So it really
Mm.
helps that I can use marketing as a supporting argument. I wouldn't even say argument, kind of like a supporting thing for me to tell my parents pretty much.
Ilhan, you spoke before about community, and we've
Yeah.
definitely heard this from a lot of our creators. So, for
Mhm.
both of you, how important was it to have that community as a stand in when you didn't have family support? And what advice would you give to our creative community about how to find the right people to build your community and your tribe?
So it took me a really long time to even find any slight community, you know, any um because I tell people that like, you know, when a dance floor is empty, I'm the first person to get on the dance floor and start dancing. Like I
Mm.
am the person who gives the permission to everybody else to be like it's okay to come on the dance floor. So being like a person who initiates and start things, um I guess one thing about community is that you have to be very vocal about it all the
Mhm.
time. Like
Mm.
letting people know what you're doing and often do it often.
It's great advice. Great. You have to be your own marketer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the thing as well, where it's like it always will feel and look like self promotion all the time. But sometimes it could be a cry for help, you know?
Yeah, I think in terms of like finding community, I also in the filmmaking world, I really struggled for quite some time. And then I think it was right before the pandemic, I started to do this thing where I was like, I'm gonna give myself permission and allow myself to just go to these film events. Cause I never used to go because I was like, I shouldn't be in those spaces. I'm not a filmmaker. I haven't made anything yet.
Mhm.
And I think just like we're always nervous to go to things alone or if we're not like part of that community, but it's like just go. You never know who you're gonna meet. And I think for myself, I met a lot of people that are now that come on board to work with me, whether it's hair and makeup or it's on production sound, because I've met them at so many like networking events
Mhm.
and conferences. And just go, push yourself, and you never know who you'll meet.
Great advice again. You've both shared some really valuable insights for us. Before we say goodbye, what's the best way for our listeners and viewers to to see your rap videos or to see your next project?
I'm most frequently on Instagram and my handle is Calgary Videographer.
So you can find me on Instagram as well. My username is I am Ilhan, and I usually post a lot on there for the films that I'm working on.
Perfect.
I can tell you that we will definitely be keeping an eye out on your social media for your upcoming projects. And I want to thank you both for spending some time with us today on First Frame.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks again.
So Cam, that was such a great session today. Loved hearing their perspectives because it's definitely a topic that we hear a lot of from our creators. So which piece of advice that they shared really resonated with you?
Getting help from anyone is really important, right? So like get your family involved. Like I like you heard how she brought her mom on site, right? And how Kien's thinking about doing his next production about his parents, right? And their love story and bringing them into the production. So I think getting them maybe to do some hands-on work with you to see what it's all about is really important.
Because it can seem foreign to people who aren't familiar with the industry or familiar with the work that you're doing, for sure. And then for me, I think the other piece was, if you're not getting that buy-in from your family, find your community that can back you and that can support you and that can help you along, maybe until you get to that point and even past getting that point that your family's on board. So that's it for this episode of First Frame, brought to you by TELUS STORYHIVE. Thanks so much to you, our viewers and listeners, for joining us today.
Please hit the follow button so you don't miss a single episode of our series. And be sure to tune in next time when we're going to find out from a couple of industry veterans how to create the perfect pitch for your next project.
In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about how TELUS STORYHIVE can help you along your content creation journey, you can check out storyhive.com. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Park.
And I'm Cameron Zinger. And that's a wrap.